Welcome to the Security Equation. Today I have Stephen Staats, also known as Old Man Liver, joining us for the show. Stephen, welcome to the Security Equation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board. Look, you've been in this industry, the events industry, in various aspects of it for over 30 years. I don't want to give away your age here. Tell me how
Appreciate that.
What attracted you to this industry? You're growing up, did you think, I want to be in the events industry?
Well, it's funny. I kind of fell into it because it was one of these things that I always pictured myself, I'm a guitar player, so I played in a band all my life. And I always pictured myself as the guy that was just going to show up to rehearsal and practice and do my thing and just play guitar, and that's my role. But I realized, like a lot of musicians and people in the industry, don't have any business background whatsoever or understanding of the business side of things. So I ended up being the organizer of the band, the one booking gigs, the one booking events. And if nobody else will do it, you just kind of have to step into that role. And then it was really the BreastFest breast cancer benefit that we started in 1999 that really kicked things in for me organizing events, because it was one of those things. My mom had breast cancer and I wanted to do something and kind of give back in a way that I could afford and is more of my style. So at the time, everybody was doing like fancy gala dinners as charity events and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm going to do something, rock and roll. That's my style. And we called it BreastFest, and it got national attention. And we had this band, Third Eye Blind, and Duncan Sheik, who were big at the time, jump on board. And since then, a lot of big acts have contributed, and we started doing it every year. And then I just got into organizing other events, and now we have a whole event company called Buttered Popcorn Productions, and we do everything from BreastFest to Mojave Mayhem, which is an event for Fallout fans. We just did another event on the East Coast called Wasteland Jamboree. We do a Mardi Gras out in Las Vegas. We have Nevada Blues Festival and Good Screams, which is kind of a Halloween event that we do with some of the guys from Ghost Adventures.
So before I get into the very unique names of your different activities, am I to assume that your guitar days was rock and roll, or what was your genre of music?
No, it's funny. We still have the same band. We're called Early Dawn, and we're older, so we're not out there touring all the time like we used to be. We're on a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, so we were really, we're doing several gigs a week and very active. Now we play every so often, but we still get like publishing rights, money from publishing if a TV or film uses one of our songs. So that's kind of fun. But then the Old Man Liver, the reason I got the Old Man Liver nickname was when I turned 30, people in the music industry, I'm living in Los Angeles, and in Hollywood, you're kind of old when you turn 30. So people are like, "You still going to do this pop rock stuff, in your 30s?" And I'm like, well, I'm not dead. And, B.B. King's doing a club gig in his 80s, and Les Paul's doing a weekly club gig in his 90s, and not comparing myself talent-wise to those guys, but just attitude of wanting to play till I die. So I started a side project called Old Man Liver, and we were booked at some pretty prominent venues in LA, like the Viper Room, the Troubadour, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Roxy Theater, and it went over really well. And people just started calling me Old Man Liver, although I meant for the band to be called Old Man Liver. It was kind of an Alice Cooper type deal. And then I got used to it, and now Old Man Liver is a whiskey, beef jerky, a hot sauce, a book, music. It's its own brand now, which is fun. But I still try to play as much as possible, and I get up with different bands and perform, and now I play with the Old Man Liver. The Old Man Liver band's called Old Man Liver and the Fluffers, and we have a lot of fun. So we still do pretty regular gigs. So I'm gonna do it till I'm dead.
Your naming conventions just give like it's really good marketing, because Old Man Liver, the first thing I think of is he must have a drinking problem. right? He's got
Well, that's true. Yeah, I'm old and my liver's older. I'll say that.
I mean, old man liver and the fluffers. What do you got it? Like, come on, should I even go down that road of what the fluffers make?
If you know what a fluffer is, that's your own fault. That's how I look at it. So, I can't. I've got to entertain myself first, and then if it's funny to me, I hope it's funny to somebody else. Even that's our attitude with the whiskey. Like, I designed a whiskey that I loved the flavor and had the proof I wanted and everything. And I'm like, if I like it, hopefully somebody else will. But if they don't, I got a lifetime of whiskey I can drink. So,
Right.
So it's got to be entertaining to me, or so if something doesn't work, at least we entertained ourselves. That's the goal.
So you ventured into the BreastFest for breast cancer. Great idea, and I love the idea of getting away from to do fundraising for the masses versus the gala celebrity type crowd. How has that gone? How much money have you raised for breast cancer? Like, give me some stats here.
Yeah, we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars now through the years, and then we also try to raise awareness, and we have like mammogram groups come out and try to educate people, and cancer centers support, and we do it really. Like I said, just to your point, more for the masses, and if someone only has $5 and they can help out, then that's great. And the cool thing is now we've moved it from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and it's held at my own bar called the Pioneer Saloon, so we don't have to pay a venue fee, and we can offer it for free. And our corporate sponsors, which a buddy of mine from high school, he started a chicken strip chain called Raising Cane's.
I know Raising Cane's. My stepdaughter loved Raising Cane's.
Oh, awesome! Yeah. He's an example of being successful in the restaurant business, and so I usually use him as an example that you can actually make money in the restaurant business if you hang in there long enough. But yeah, and Raising Cane's has been our title sponsor for many years. So all the sponsors now raise the money, and we do a little bit through a silent auction and stuff like that, so people can attend the event for free if they want, which is great.
Didn't I just read something about his business? He literally built his first restaurant in Baton Rouge, right? He did.
And that's where I'm from. So
yeah.
And it was just one restaurant for a long time. And he was busting his ass, getting up at 4 a.m., cooking chicken, and people just think these things just take off, but it takes years and years, and you're struggling. And then finally it just hit, and then people wanted to franchise it. And from there it exploded. And from my understanding, he owns all the restaurants now himself, which is like 800 of them across the country and elsewhere.
He's a phenomenal story because if I remember this, and I think this article is very recent, but he literally by hand built this restaurant in Baton Rouge. And then so like I would say he did it the hard way, right? Like, he didn't have some conglomerate that said, oh, this is a good idea, we'll put the money behind you, and we'll build your brick and mortar stores and all that. Like, he built it himself, created this great reputation, and franchised it out, and he's a huge success story. So
yeah, he couldn't. The funny thing is, back in the day, he couldn't even get a bank loan because at the time, this was like 25 years ago now, but like restaurants were expanding their menus, and he was kind of trying to take the In-N-Out burger approach, like just have like 3 or 4 things and make it good. But the banks wouldn't support that. They're like, you're not going to. They literally told him he'll never make it just selling chicken strips. So he went and did one of those Alaskan crab fishing thing where you risk your life for 2 weeks on a boat. And he raised the money himself to get his first one started. And then, like I said, it took years and years for it to take off. But finally it did. And he's my example, because in the restaurant, and I'm in a lot of different industries, but the restaurant industry, the big joke is it's a get poor quick scheme.
Sure.
And the only way to make money in the restaurant industry, to make a little money, is to start with a lot. So that's the jokes we use in the restaurant industry. But I'm apparently a glutton for punishment, because we're about to open a second one here in Las Vegas too. So I haven't learned my lesson.
Which part of the Vegas area are you in?
It's going to be Southern Highlands, so the south side of Las Vegas. So it's exciting. This one's going. So my old lady, it's funny. Her nickname's Mama Tess, and so we have old man liver and Mama Tess, and we have a lot of old man liver products. So this time we're doing a restaurant called Mama Tess's Artisan Kitchen, and it's going to be all her recipes and homemade stuff and organic and local food from local farms and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of going in a different direction. But it's funny. She first, even though we met for the first time 8 years ago, she first heard about me on national TV for the very first BreastFest. Ironically, she's like, "Oh, that's funny." It's because BreastFest at the time, even though it was the '90s, was controversial to have the name breast in the breast cancer benefit, which just made me laugh. But that's how we got national press, and it worked. So it achieved my goal of getting some attention, which, as you pointed out, like we try to be creative with the names of our projects, and most of them, helps them get attention. But ironically, that was the first introduction she had of me was like on MTV or something.
I have to go back a little bit here because you just used the phrase, and my wife. You've been on her show.
Oh yeah.
I wonder what the backlash would be if I called my wife my old lady.
Oh yeah, she's a trooper, and that she loves that title, and she's a very big supporter of the Old Man Liver brand, which can be a little irreverent.
Right.
As she came up with the offensively refined as our slogan for the whiskey. And so that's the fun thing. I can really get away with saying whatever I want because I'm kind of pre-canceled.
I'm sure she would. It wouldn't go well in my house. So let's talk about your events, BreastFest and these others. What size crowds are we talking about typically? Are you attracting at these events?
Yeah, they'll get like, a lot of them are, 1,000, 2,000, that kind of thing. The Fallout events have grown to like 8,000 to 9,000.
Great.
So they're getting a little. We actually had to cap tickets at the last Fallout fan celebration last November because we had so many people last minute trying to get tickets. And we just ran out of room and buses, and that kind of literally the entire city of Las Vegas was out of buses.
Well, that's what I was going to go to. So if you're holding 1,000-person event, and then you go 8, 9, 10x that, it's 8, 9, 10x the headaches, isn't it? You think you want to have these 10, 20, 30,000 person events? It's 10x the headaches.
No, and thank you for pointing that out because people just kind of assume in fun, like using the Fallout fan celebration as an example, that started out being free, and we just we had to put a ticket price on it just because this little town of Good Springs that's right outside of Las Vegas is only 200 people. Right. So we just ran out of room and we had to bus people in, and people don't realize, buses cost hundreds of thousands of dollars on that level when you're running them back and forth 24 hours and have ADA compliant buses and that kind of thing. So we, it does get, and anything over 5,000 people, especially in Clark County where Las Vegas is located, you have a whole nother round of permitting you have to do and licensing, and of course you have to worry about medical and security, and you have to hire both private and public security. So like the last Fallout event, we had both Wayne Newton and Walton Goggins participate in the event at the same day. And we had to work with both the Las Vegas local Metro Police Department, as well as our own private security and the Amazon security for Walton Goggins. And people just don't think about the logistics, but it is a pretty brutal thing. And that's why sometimes people just prefer their events to stay a certain size, which I get.
When did security become a topic for you with the events that you were running? I mean, you've been involved in this for 30 years, and security has significantly changed over that time. When did it first become a challenge for you, where you had to stop and go, okay, I really got to focus on this because there's real risk here?
Yeah, it's one of those, when you grow to a certain size, you have, crazies. It's just a fact. And then using the Fallout fan celebration as example, all these guys are really into cosplay, and the audience is dressed up and walking around with pretend weapons. And
Right.
so at that point, and some of them are pretty hard to tell. So we had to, you never want someone to take advantage of having a lot of people in one spot to make a statement or try to get on international or national TV. So you don't want to give them the chance. So we started having to have gun checks because Nevada is weird, because it's a open carry state, and businesses can decide whether
Right.
you allow guns or not allow guns. And generally, Pioneer Saloon, ironically, we allow people to bring their weapons in on a regular basis. But that particular weekend, we're like, no real weapons, and every pretend gun is going to be checked by a security officer. So really, it's when something grows past 5,000 people, you've got to really have security set up and people watching, and plain clothes, and noticeable uniform security as well, just to keep an eye on everybody. And because safety, out of all the events, the one thing we always say first, safety.
Yeah.
Then the fan experience and so on and so forth. But if you put safety first, that's always the priority.
But you touched on it. You bring, whether it's 1,000 people or 5,000 people together, you're providing an opportunity for somebody who completely unrelated to the cause of the event itself, but it's an opportunity for somebody to act in a nefarious manner for whatever cause they might have. So your focus has to shift pretty quickly, and your point about safety being first is highly critical. You're running what I would call a P&L event. You have a profit and loss, and you don't want to lose money. How do you, as a event operator, how do you make those business decisions as to when, look, you got to pay for that Clark County PD, that extra off-duty officer or 10, you got to pay for that private security. Now you're doing weapon screening. At some point, you as the operator have to make the right decisions. How do you decide what the right decision is when it comes to those topics?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we are on a budget, right? We just don't have an infinite amount of money to go and do everything that we would like to do, and it's hard to. It is at a certain point you got to take a leap of faith. For instance, we just did this Wasteland Jamboree event in Sutton and Flatwoods, West Virginia, and we had never done it before, and we didn't know if people would be interested in coming. And you've got to first, take a calculated risk and go, I'm going to throw this event. I'm committed to the hotel. If no one shows up, I'm going to be out that money. And you're just taking a calculated risk, and you got to weigh it out. And luckily, in this particular case, we had 5,000 people show up to the very first one that we did, but we didn't know that. We just had to go, okay, now we've got a fan base that likes these things. We know some people have been saying they wanted to come to the West Coast, but they haven't had the time off work or the money to pay for gas and blah, blah. So let's bring it to them and just see if they're interested. And just at a certain point, you just take a calculated leap of faith with the budget you have, and just be prepared to lose if it doesn't work. Yeah. And so that's the art of the event throwing, is going, okay, and generally, we always say this, that the first time we throw a new event, usually people don't know what it is until we have pictures and video. And then the next year, it builds off that. Like we did that with Mojave, we call it Mojave Mardi Gras, because being from Louisiana, I was used to growing up with Mardi Gras celebrations, and I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't something better in Las Vegas. And so I'm like, well, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to have to do it. So we flew in fresh crawfish from New Orleans. We had authentic Pat O'Brien's hurricanes and beignets, and I cooked my mom's red beans and rice, and we did gumbo and all this stuff. And people, once, first year we took a bunch of pictures, and then the next year, doubled in size. And then we added a parade, and then we got pictures of that so people could see what a parade looks like out here. And then, it tends to grow from there once you've done it once or twice and people can see what you're trying to do. then it generally grows from there.
For sure. What in your experience, like what's give me a scenario where you said, you know what, this event may not make it through the weekend. We might have to pull the plug.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's a specific thing where, definitely there's been some where, we went a little bit, didn't have the proper calculations. I'll just say that, where we've ran out of space. I would say this last Fallout event, even though we've got like 4 acres in Good Springs, it was one of those that we had to go, okay, like 2,000 tickets were sold in the last 24 hours leading up to the event and during the event. And that we didn't calculate for. So at that point, you've got long bus lines, you've got long registration lines, and it's just not a good experience for the attendee at that point. So we had to make the brutal choice to just cut ticket sales altogether, which is painful when you're thinking revenue wise, but you got to always, you got to think the fan experience. It's not, if you go into, in my opinion, just in general, if you go into things for the money, that's usually a bad idea. You got to go into it for a different reason and passionate reason or an opportunity or something. And then hopefully the money will come. Because not all big events do well. And in fact, some in Las Vegas, some of the music festivals have been canceled because they're just too big and you're paying artists, some artists that you wouldn't even think, command $1 million prices to come do an hour gig. And, at a certain point, there's the law of diminishing returns or whatever they call it, where it's just not worth it.
Yeah. I mean, and the size just, it varies. Like, we'll do events for 300 people. We'll do events for 40,000 people. And, I'm not a promoter, but we are, the security, the screening, the crowd management, the emergency ops, all of those canine, we have all the pieces, but they all apply regardless of the size of the event. You still need all those aspects, because if you're bringing a few hundred people together, or you're bringing, tens of thousands of people together, you have to scale that safety and that guest experience. And at some point you just run out of space or run out of resources.
Right. And how all the logistics that go into these things. And it's you have to think about stuff that other people don't think about, even if the likelihood isn't strong. You've got to, and there's always some kind of drama in every community. And there's always someone with a chip on their shoulder that likes to, stir up stuff online before the events. Sure. And so, logistically what goes into this thing, but that's stuff you don't want to burden the event goer with, like they want to have fun. They don't want to see necessarily the force where they feel like they're being watched by the police the whole time, or there's an ambulance every few feet where it's like, I'm just waiting to, hurt myself. But there's always going to be something. Like even, one year we had a very safe event, but someone just tripped out in the desert and fell into some like cacti that she was allergic to, and we had to send her to the hospital just from falling into a bush on accident. So there's every little thing and then every big thing, and you have to have the contingencies, as for all of this.
This is a topic that I've had 100 different conversations about, and I get a variety of different feedback. So I'm going to ask you, you're hosting the festival. You're doing a certain level of screening. You're trying to make it safe, weapons and stuff like that. Where do you fall on because you just brought up the attendee that shows up and takes some sort of drug that you didn't provide as the festival operator, and they've taken that responsibility upon themselves to take some drug. Where do you fall on it's your responsibility to screen everybody to make sure that drug doesn't end up in your perimeter versus it's the person's liability to not get involved in something they don't know what they're doing with?
Well, for me, personally, I believe in people's individual responsibility. And I hate the fact that we're such a litigious society now that, if someone does something dumb and it happens to be on your property, they want to sue you and get
Right.
some money out of it and that kind of thing. So while I fundamentally believe in people's own responsibility as a business owner and a property owner and that kind of thing, you have to take responsibility for anything anyone does at your property. And that's
Right.
usually, using the Pioneer Saloon as an example, that's the biggest problems we have. It's not our bartenders over serving people, it's someone showing up on drugs or drunk already, and
Right.
then you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And often we recommend people sleeping it off in their cars because
Yeah.
it's one of those, you don't want to tell people to leave, but then they have to drive, and they're
Right.
impaired. So that's generally one of our go-tos is sleep in the car. And I've even put my house up with even strangers, a house right down the road, and I'm like, let's go sleep it off. It's within walking distance. You're trying to take care. You're as the host, you're kind of the father of the event, and you
Yeah.
got to. For me, the stress just depends on how many people you have helping. If you're doing most of the screening and having to watch people and all that, you can't really enjoy the event, which
Yeah.
sometimes is just part of it. But
Right.
other times we have a big team, and I can kind of lay back and not have to be so. But there's always the buck stops with you. So like even at the
Right.
last Fallout event, I joke about always having to be in the background putting out fires. This was one where our neighbor's house right behind our bar, their boat caught fire. So I literally am running over there to help put out the fire. The firemen, they were already there. And I was like, oh, please don't let it be one of our attendees, like threw a cigarette in someone's boat. And
Right.
that, and you have to stress on that. Luckily,
Yeah.
that wasn't the case in this particular, but you're dealing with that behind the scenes the whole time. And so that's why I like going back and watching YouTube videos of these events and seeing what someone else actually experienced, because it's never
Right.
what I get to experience. So.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. A lot of people know about Fyre Festival. Have watched the documentaries, watched the news when it all happened. Let's start with, why did you want to get involved with Fyre Festival?
Yeah, this was a fun one that I talked with your wife about. It was interesting because generally, as you probably noticed, I like to start my own unique events with my own names and starting from scratch, and not really. And I'd say the Pioneer Saloon is the first business. I've sold 2 businesses before, but I've never bought a business. So Pioneer Saloon was the first business I bought that was pre-existing and had a 113-year history, and because we just saw the potential of what it could be, and what it wasn't at the time. And same thing with Fyre Festival. We're like, wow, that was a great idea, but they just fucked it up. And like, it could have been so cool in the way they marketed it, and they were clearly successful in the marketing
For sure.
aspect and getting people excited about going to an event they don't even know who's playing. And so the idea behind it, I thought, was really cool. And so, but in the fact that they couldn't execute it where I knew I could, and I'm just like, hey, maybe we can reinvent this brand and make it cool. And a lot of people can't get away with even being associated with a guy who's been to prison and,
Right.
has a brand that was in the shit house. But luckily, in my situation, as I joked about being pre-canceled, Old Man Liver can get away with trying to buy a festival like without getting too much of a reputation hit.
But what did you see as the business value of a very damaged brand?
Just the press.
Okay. Instead of just saying, Old Man Liver can rebrand this you'd come up with something very unique. And so instead of starting from scratch, you thought there was an investment in the brand just because of the bad press that they had previously had. And you would turn it into some good press by being the savior and making it making it a great event. Was that the thinking?
That was the goal, and I knew at least it was something that would get on the news as soon as I bought it, and they'd be
Right.
like, Las Vegas businessman goes by Old Man Liver, buys the Fyre Festival, and I thrown out, tried to do it for like $100,000, and I know it ended up going to like LimeWire for 250 or something like that ultimately. But they seemed very serious about it, for several weeks. We actually talked through different ideas, because I was like, yeah, we can call it Fyre Festival the Resurrection, and have like not only resurrecting the Fyre Festival, but other bands that have gone, that one-hit wonders that still have talent, or still playing, that want to get their name back out there, or brands that have kind of died off, and make it a whole brand resurrection. And then another idea we had was a country music version, because if it's in Las Vegas, which is what we were talking about, that's there's a big country music segment out here that it would work. So we had a few different ideas, but even if we did the Caribbean thing, I have a house in Belize, and I know a lot of the people, the locals there, that would help me throw a music festival. So for me, it would have been no problem, whatever form we did it in. We'd at least have, the amount of people they had show up at theirs, and we at least wouldn't let them just, show up with nothing to do and nowhere to sleep and that kind of thing.
Tell us about the negotiations, though, because people have gotten to know their perspective of the guy that started it and did time for. What were those negotiations like? And what was the red flags that you said, okay, I'm out?
Yeah. So, you think if someone's, and I guess my big mistake was using common sense and logic in this. And I'm like, if someone's been to prison and they're trying to revive their reputation, you think they'd go overboard to be more professional and do it right the second time, and really be hands-on, and that's kind of what I was expecting, because I was like, it's just dumb to, if they keep their reputation going, which is ultimately what they did. And so we had spent not too long. The transition was a matter of like 6 weeks from the first time that we started talking to when everything broke down. And really what made it break down was the contract that they wanted me to sign. Well, we'd agreed on $100,000, and contract shows up and it's like 125. And they're like, oh, we worked in an appearance fee with Billy McFarland. And I'm like, well, I don't want him to show up. Like, that's kind of the point, is getting away from that. And then when I looked at the contract, it was like one of the worst written contracts. And you could tell it was like a Chat GPT thing. Right. And then they didn't even have their name correct of their LLC. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, guys, I'm going to have to really dig in and have my attorney come up with a proper contract, and they're going to have to spend some time and money making sure that your LLC actually owns the trademark of the name. Right. That's the other thing, is
due diligence.
Due diligence, yeah. Legally, they could have, sold it already, or they may not own it, or maybe it was part of the court decision that they don't have the rights to it anymore, and that. So you've got to look into all that. They didn't understand that at all. They're like, "What are you talking about? This is taking too long." And then finally, the guy just lost his patience and is like, "I'm done with you," and started, cussing at me and insulting, and even in the email messages and stuff, I'm like, you're just living up to your reputation yet again. Right. And that, of course, pissed him off even more. And it would have been a funny. He was expecting me to send the recording to TMZ, because I guess that's what other people did. But sure. You got to think of the legal repercussions on all that stuff.
He may have wanted you to, but like he kind of liked that.
Yeah, maybe so. But it was so bad. Like I guess because I was even like, let me guess, you've had a few drinks tonight. I'm taking because you sound nothing like you sounded yesterday morning. And yeah, well, fucking kick rocks. I don't have time for you. There's no way you spent thousands on attorney fee. Because at first he goes, because I was like, thanks for having me waste money on attorneys for no reason.
Right.
And so that was the only thing I was pissed about, was just the waste of my time and money for attorneys. And he's like, oh, you don't spend thousands on attorneys. Nobody spends thousands on attorneys. I'm like, everybody spends thousands. Anybody that knows anything about any legal, if you email an attorney, it's costs you $350 or whatever. Like attorneys are expensive. Yes, Chat
Yes, they
GPT
are.
is free, but you have, like anyone in business knows that.
Yeah.
And for him to not even them to have no clue on that was just mind boggling. And I know, and that's why I was like, even telling your wife, like if they want to dispute anything, any points I've said, I will happily get on the same show and talk about it. I'll get on a lie detector test with them.
That would be a fun episode for sure.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
if Billy McFarland calls you tomorrow and says, Stephen, help me do Fyre Festival the right way, would you consider it?
That would be a tough one just because I know his soul hasn't changed, like his chip. Yeah, that chip didn't get fixed in prison. And now that I've worked with him, it would have to be something mind-boggling, which he couldn't afford or have the power to do. At this point, I'd rather, just do a music festival from scratch, which is probably what I'm going to do. We're talking about a Belize music festival in a couple of years, and that'll be my getting that out of the system instead of Fyre.
Well, if you do Belize and it's either country or yacht rock or yacht house, Rachel and I will be there.
Awesome. Yeah. Have you seen Yachtly Crew?
No, I haven't seen them yet.
They're so funny. Yeah, they're great. They come through Vegas every so often, but they're great. I love yacht rock. That, to me, like the 70s was the best singer-songwriter period of music, just modern music in general. Like great songs came out of the 70s, man.
So let's provide some lessons learned here or some advice. If a young promoter were listening right now, or someone that wants to get in the business, what's one mistake they would make chasing growth that ultimately puts attendees at risk that you would advise them? How would you advise them on getting into the business and what the pitfalls are?
Yeah, I'd say start small and grow from there. Don't get too ambitious too fast, because that's where people get into trouble. And some of these other events have had to be canceled. And then safety first. Yep. And then the experience of the attendee next. And then don't put money in that you're not willing to lose, because there is always that where you've got to back up your investment, and and then just do something you're passionate about and enjoy, and then it'll be more fun. Even if it's unsuccessful from a financial standpoint, you'll still have a good time. Right.
Good feedback. If I was a young individual wanting to get into the event business, what's your advice? How do I get into the business? How do I grow? How do I become very successful in the business?
Well, the smart way to do it is working for somebody else that already knows what they're doing. So if you live in a town that's big enough to have an event company, go get a job and work your way up, and then you'll get the contacts. You'll get paid while you get the experience and the contacts, and learn from other. You can learn from other people's mistakes, which is a huge benefit, because then you don't have to waste time making your own.
What's the most dangerous part about live events today compared to back in the 90s when you started?
Oh yeah, weapons.
Yeah,
it's a lot more people have guns and carry them, and more states allow that. And it's kind of funny, even at the Pioneer Saloon, that's the one aspect that I tell people, that it's more Wild West than it was when we opened up 113 years ago, because back then you had to turn in your gun to the proprietor, where now we don't even require that, but which freaks people out, especially if you're from a state that doesn't allow that kind of thing.
Right.
And then and it's actually illegal for someone to drink with a gun. And ironically, in Nevada, you can be drunker than you can be up to 0.10, which is even drunker than if you're driving a car at 0.08. So the laws are really funny, but in the bottom line is the buck stops with you, and you are the police and the medical, and everything falls under your responsibility when it really comes down to it. So that's the bigger concern, that kind of like schools, when we once again, aging myself, but back in the day, you didn't have to worry about going to school and someone shooting up the whole school. You might get in a fist fight with your bully friend or whatever, that kind of thing, but you weren't worried about people doing mass shootings. And now you have to.
It was nice when it was just a punch in the nose versus, something more life-threatening, right?
Right. People pulling out weapons and.
Yeah. In the saloon, because you brought it up a couple of times, have you had incidents where your guests have, pulled out their weapon? Because a simple argument could flip quickly, right?
It can, yeah. That's why you got to just be on guard and watching people. And luckily in our saloon, it's more of a day drinking spot, and it's a little bit outside of town, so people don't specifically come out there to get in a fight and and have a bad time. But if you do, there's always those people that like to shake shit up, and you just got to keep an eye.
But is it self-regulating? Because if you're carrying and I'm carrying, you just assume everybody in there might be carrying. So if you make that assumption going in, and you bump into me and spill my drink, or you spill your drink on me, is it self-regulating, or everybody goes like, we're all on the same playing field here, so I might have a word with you, but I'm not going to go to the next level?
Yeah, I think there's that aspect to it. Me personally, I don't carry a gun to counter another gun, because in real life, if something goes down, unless you're a professional and you're practicing every day and using weapons all the time and working in adrenaline scenarios, when you're in a real situation, you're shaking, and you're as apt to shoot a civilian as you are someone that's threatening you with a gun. So I prefer to try to calm everyone down without adding another weapon to the thing, which that I've had to do multiple times. Like, hey, everyone just fucking chill out. Like, and usually you can de-escalate, but because it's out in the small town, it's almost a small town. We are self-regulating. We have to self-police, and we're first responders. So all our managers are trained in CPR and that kind of thing. And we do have people that just, get in motorcycle accidents right in front of the saloon and that kind of thing. And we're the first ones that have to be there and take care of somebody, because it takes a little while for an ambulance to get out there. You don't want to have a heart attack in Good Springs.
But I think your advice about, unless you're trained in doing this daily, bearing a weapon is a very challenging thing to do, and people don't understand how risky it is and how hard it is to actually use that weapon. And that's where I think we get a little skewed in this country about weapons. But look, Stephen, I really appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation. Best of luck with
thank you.
all of the
you
endeavors.
And your wife are lovely. Thank you for having me on. Y'all always ask very intricate, good questions that a lot of people don't ask. So thank you.
Well, you might know who prepares most of my questions, so you'll understand that now.
I get it.
But thank you very much. Pleasure having you on, and best of luck with all your endeavors.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
And let me know when we're going to do country or yacht rock in Belize.
Yeah, we're going to do that. Well, we'll need security help and stuff. So there you go. It'd be fun to work together at some point.
All right. Thanks, man.